This is a short lesson on metric conversions. And again, you guys will always be given a chart, but there's another way I like to teach this that makes it a little bit easier. And I made up this little picture for you to use to help you with your metric conversion. So I like to use something I call metric street when I'm doing metric conversions. So if you think about a street, it's got houses all up and down the street. So I'm going to draw metric street here, and all my houses are going to go on the block. So on metric street, the biggest house on the street is Kilo's house. Okay, so I'm going to put Kilo here. And this is going to work for length, capacity, and weight because the prefix is always the same and you're just changing it into liters, meters, grams. So here's Kilo's house. He's the biggest house in the street. And then we have Hecto's house. I'm going to put a Hecto here. And next we have Deca. His house is here. I used to draw them different sizes, but then that got kind of confusing. And here in the middle, we have liter, meter, gram. Okay, so these guys are like roommates. You want to pull the guy that you need for the job. So we have liter, meter, and gram here in the center house. That's kind of your baseline. Then after that, we have little Desi's house. And then we have Senti's house. And last we have cute little Millie's house. So let me explain how you use metric street to do this. So on metric street, if we move one house over, you're going to multiply or divide, depending on the way you're going, by 10. One house, 1 0. If I have two houses over, I'm going to multiply or divide by 100. Two houses, 2 zeros. Pretty easy, huh? Three houses over, we're going to multiply or divide by 1,000. Four houses would be 10,000 and so on. But really, these are the three that you're going to see the most. So I would just focus on these. So we're still going to use the small to big and big to small that we used before. On metric street, if we're going this way to the right, we're going big to small. So that's how you decide if you are multiplying or dividing. If we're moving this direction on metric street, we're going small to big. So we divide. And this, again, this is the unit we're using depending on what measurements we're converting. So if you think about this is metric street and you're using the houses to determine what you do, it's going to make a lot of sense. So for example, let's say I am converting 3 kiloliters. The liters are always capitalized, meters and grams lowercase m. So kiloliters, and I want to take it to liters. What's going to be bigger, kilo or liter? Well, this is my big. I'm going big to small, so I'm multiplying all, and I'm going to go back to my metric street. If I start at kilos house and go to liters house, 1, 2, 3. I jumped 3 houses, so that means I'm using that 1,000. So I'm going to come back over here and multiply 3 times 1,000 and get 3,000 liters. So on these, it's going to be really easy because you're just shipping zeros over or dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000. Another example, if I have 340 centimeters and I want to change that to decimeters. These are going to be a little bit harder for you to do at first because you're not used to the decimeter, but you'll get used to it. If I look at metric street, who's going to be bigger, deci or centi? Well, deci is my big because he's to the left, and I'm moving 1 house, so I'm going to be using 10. So on this one, this is my big. I'm going small to big, so I divide the pig. 1 house, I'm dividing by 10. When I divide and I have zeros on both sides, I can cancel out these zeros. 34 divided by 1 is 34. Your math is about to get a whole lot easier than it was on the customary. Let's say I have something like this. And this is where you have to remember what we used with decimals. If I have 248 decigrams, little d is deci, and I want to change it to decagrams. Deca is always going to be the big G. Deci is the little g, little d. So on this one, I know deca is my big. I'm going small to big, so I divide, but I don't have any zeros here. This is when you're going to have to think back to what we did with decimals. If I start at deca's house and I go to deci's, I'm moving 1, 2 houses, so I'm using 100 on this. If I'm dividing a number by 100 that doesn't have any zeros, I'm going to add a decimal here if there's not a decimal and move my decimal over 2 spots to the left. So this would be 2 and 48 hundredths decagrams. If I am doing a problem where I'm multiplying with decimals, let's look at this one. 7 and 25 hundredths. Let's do hectoliters and change it to deciliters. Remember the big H is hecto, okay? I'm going to go to metric street. Hecto is definitely bigger than deci here, okay? And I'm going to count the houses. 1, 2, 3. So I'm using 1,000. So on this one, I'm going to circle my big to small. I multiply all. I'm multiplying times 1,000 because I counted those 3 houses. And remember, when you're doing 1,000 times a number with a decimal, I don't have to stack it up. These 3 zeros here tell me I hop 1, 2, 3 times to the right, and I need to put a 0 in an empty spot when there's a gap. So I have 7,250 deciliters. These problems are going to be pretty rare, but you need to know how to do them because you don't want to stack something like this up. You're just going to have a pile of zeros and do a whole bunch of work that you really don't need to do. So remember, When you're multiplying and dividing, multiply, ship the zeros. I have 3 zeros here, just ship them over here and do 3 times 1. Divide, cancel out any zeros you can, and ship the survivors. And then when you're doing decimals, you're moving the decimals to the left when you're dividing, and you're moving the decimal to the right when you're multiplying, to have that right placement. Make sure you're going back to your metric street and make sure you're counting the houses correctly. If you're going millimeters to decimeters, you're jumping 1, 2. Some kids try to count 1, 2, 3 houses, but you're counting the movement to the next conversion house. I hope that helps.